when you buy, you have to be aware what you're spending your money on. I've seen so many investment groups that haven't done that thoroughly. And I'm talking about at scale. You're talking about millions of dollars worth of deferred maintenance that was overlooked because the process wasn't followed.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, as always, Yonah Weiss. Grateful to be here today with another awesome guest. We got Adrian Danila. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Yonah. I'm honored to be here.
My pleasure. It's always great to have another awesome podcast host on the show. I know you do the Multifamily Hangout podcast, which we did a little snippet of live, which was a lot of fun. And you also host a lot of other live events and podcasts. Amazing to spend some time with you at a conference recently, Adrian. But tell our listeners who don't know you, maybe a little background, briefly, who you are, how you got started in the real estate game.
So I want to go back to 2003 and pre-2003, right? I came to the United States in 2003. I'm originally from Romania. Back in Romania, I had nothing to do with real estate. I went to law school, graduated. I took my bar exam. So if I was to go back to Romania in theory and wanted to practice law as an attorney, I could. I'm not intending to. So I came to the United States in 2003. I didn't speak the language. I only spoke probably 20 to 30 very basic words. Some of them I wouldn't set them in a public setting, inappropriate. And I went to night school and I started applying for jobs. A family that helped us out in the United States told us that you should go and apply. And then, when they ask you for a salary, you just put open, right? Because you don't want to ask for too much money and then you'll get turned down. But that didn't get anywhere. And one day a friend of mine said, there's a couple of openings at Georgia Tech. He used to work on his PhD at Georgia Tech. Groundskeeper openings. Why don't you apply? So I went and applied, nothing happened. But this word groundskeeper stuck with me. So then I went back to the online portals that were available at the time, Monster and Yahoo Jobs and so on and so forth. And I started applying for groundskeeper jobs. In a few months that paid off. I was interviewed for a part-time job at an apartment community. And the rest is kind of history. I moved up from part-time to a full-time groundskeeper. And then, punch technician, service manager, director of maintenance for several large operators, Greystar, Belfort Berry communities. Most recently, I've been a vice president of a company based out of West Coast, PMG, that own and manage 32,000 units. In the most recent months, I started a consulting business, so I don't work as an employee for a property management company. I do consulting for property management firms of my own. And as you mentioned before, I do a lot of media content, 3 different podcasts, and they're all multifamily related.
And that's a lot to kind of take in. But it sounds like from the groundskeeping job, you got really an understanding of property management in general from the boots on the ground. And I think that's something that gets overlooked. It's like scaling literally from the groundskeeper all the way up to, running your own company. It's just pretty incredible to see how you can grow within that. Have you invested in real estate, and what's that like?
Yes, I have. So 5 years ago, I decided to liquidate my 401k and use the proceeds to buy a rental property, which I did. And then from that one rental property that turned into 2 and 3 and 4. So currently I do own 4 duplexes in Florida and Fort Myers area, right outside Fort Myers area, own and self-manage.
Oh, nice. How far are you from Fort Myers? I know you're in Georgia, right?
Yeah, 600 miles.
So it's not something that you're traveling to on a regular basis, I assume.
I actually have been, right? There have been, some construction issues out there that I had to address. So I've been traveling quite a bit lately, and I had to drive because being a maintenance person as trade, I feel like I have to have my toolbox and my tools with me. So to fly the tool pouch or toolbox, it becomes very complicated. So it's always a 1,200-mile round trip for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's fascinating to me is that, you really have grown into the expertise in, specifically in the maintenance area of properties, which oftentimes, gets kind of brushed under the rug. There are issues, properties have issues, especially when you're dealing with some of these bigger property management companies. They're not really focusing on the little details, right? And so a lot of things can get overlooked. I mean, I know you speak about this and you're very passionate about this subject. Like, what are some things because I know there are a lot of listeners to this podcast who are real estate owners, whether it be single family, multifamily, commercial properties, and, just love to get some tips from the expert on what are some things we should be looking at on our bottom line.
I will definitely say start by doing a thorough due diligence, right? Whether it's a single family property or a number of properties or a multifamily property, make sure that you have someone that has some sort of a maintenance facilities background that can put their eyes on the buildings, on the structure, to tell you exactly if it's something systemically wrong with the buildings. Don't take anything at face value. Always do 100% of unit walks if you're talking about multifamily. That's the first phase, right? So when you buy, you have to be aware of what you're spending your money on. I've seen so many investment groups that haven't done that thoroughly, and I'm talking about at scale. You're talking about millions of dollars worth of deferred maintenance that was overlooked because the process wasn't followed, right? So I strongly suggest, there's times when that's going to make or break a deal. You have to be aware. You can't just go in blind and assume that everything's okay and go based on the numbers of the current management company, like, what their cost is. Because look, there's maintenance shortages, labor shortages. There's also issues with floating interest rates. And when we're saying floating, they're not going down. They're not going up and down. It's more like they're climbing, right? Let's just say probably the proper word is climbing. So we have those issues, and that means that there's less money to spend on maintenance, right? And there's less qualified workforce. What that does to an asset, it turns into deferred maintenance. And these issues could go to a very, very extreme, right? Do not downplay those, okay? That's the first phase. Second phase is, once you acquire a property, make sure that you have the right maintenance personnel on a property. I know there are a lot of investors that are probably, watching your podcast. They prefer third-party management, right? And it's great to have a third-party, management company. Like, that's a totally different business than investment. And a lot of companies don't want to take on both. Yeah, totally fine with that. But please do make sure that you have someone in your team, in your investment team, that has a facilities maintenance background. That could be your owner's rep, right? Mm-hmm. Person that on a regular basis does property walks and at least randomly inspects your assets, without actually getting into too many details. But I've seen horrid stories I witnessed, I was a part of myself, in which investment groups have put their faith 100% in management companies, and that didn't turn out well. We're talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of loss, right? So I'm not saying don't trust your management, your third-party management company. I'm saying trust, but 100%, please verify.
You're so right. Whenever you're putting your trust in some third party, you have to do due diligence and you have to follow up. You have to be on top of it. There's no such thing as, especially if you have investors' money and it's not your money, you have a responsibility to know what's going on in every aspect. Now, there are some third-party managers that might get incentivized by, doing a good job with running the property. How do you feel about that in terms of having them as sort of partners on the deal? Not exactly partners, but being incentivized if they raise rents or if they keep costs down or, what have you.
So in my experience, having skin in a game is the most powerful thing, right? This applies to third-party management company, or it could apply to your own employees. What do I say by that? For example, allow your employees to invest in your deals, and the whole paradigm will change. When someone puts their own money, it doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It could be hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. They will be on the lookout for their own money. They don't want to leave the company. They want to have their eyes on their investment. They know that they're invested, right? Even if it's a small, tiny fraction. Well, the same thing goes with a third-party management company. if he could structure a deal in such a way to incentivize them, to show them skin in a game to where they're incentivized to give you more profits, to make the deal more profitable, to be on top of their stuff, I think that you will see, give them ownership, give them some sort of ownership. It really doesn't have to be maybe like, a part ownership, like 0.5 or whatever percentage, but something that's the closest thing that it will get to ownership. If it's only a transactional relationship, only based on a management fee, that's all you're going to get, a transaction, right? They're going to do just enough to get by and to secure the management fee. In other words, to keep the management contract.
Right.
But it's very rare, right, for management companies to go above and beyond, especially large ones. And here's why. Labor shortages, right? Yep. And scale too. When you're looking in the entire world, right, what comes to mind when you go to Walmart, right? Maybe cheap prices, maybe one, right? I shop at Walmart, right? Is ever high customer service on the top of the list? I don't think it is.
No.
Unfortunately. Okay, well, the same thing
it's not bad, but yeah, it's not on the top for sure.
But it's not top, right? Let's just say it's average. I'm not saying it's
for
bad,
sure.
Honestly, not top notch, right? So the same goes with, we're a large institutional property management company, right? It's kind of like silly to expect that you will get the highest level of customer service, not because they don't want to offer it. When you have such a large company, it's extremely hard to have the same type of performance level at all of your assets. There are companies that manage thousands of apartment communities.
Which means there's going to be thousands, hundreds or thousands of employees, right? Which you're absolutely right. Very hard to keep that standard.
And also thousands of cultures. People think culture in terms of it's just one thing. To me, there's a few types of culture, right? So it's your corporate culture, what corporate envisions for the culture. It's regional-based culture, right? Something that a regional manager translates into their teams, 5, 10 properties, wherever they oversee. And there's also site-level culture that's being built around your community manager and service manager. And those cultures could be like completely opposite. Someone's experience at property A could be the total opposite from someone else's experience at property B because of that local culture. So I want for everybody to think in terms of that. So it's extremely hard. Now, a smaller management company, this is their bread and butter. When you have 10 properties that you manage, if you're going to lose 1 out of 10, that's 10% of your business. I promise you that they're going to work for you a lot harder than a larger company. It's not that the larger company doesn't care. It's just by the nature of being a very large company, some things will be overlooked by default, not by design, by default.
Right. Absolutely. Adrian, tell me a little bit about your, kind of transition over the past couple of years into focusing on media. And, I know you started this Multifamily X consulting group and you're very passionate about kind of giving back to the community. What was the drive behind that? And tell me a little bit about, what exactly your goals are as well.
So I'm going to go to the genesis of how I started, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So about 3 years ago, I had someone, a LinkedIn connection that put a post out and said, if you think you have an interesting story, reach out to me. I'd like to have it reported. And I said, I'm not sure if my story is interesting, but I'll put my name in a hat. So he said, absolutely, let's record. And, after we record the conversation, he said, I think your story is really interesting. There's something to be said, right? So I slept on it. I thought about it. I said, well, what is the best way to find out? Well, one of the ways is that to volunteer myself to be a guest on a podcast. But that's kind of like, up to the host. Some hosts will have the time. Some other hosts will not have the time. What if I would just create my own podcast? Not to just tell my story, but like to have my own thing, to build my own environment, invite guests to the show and have conversations. So that's how I started. Very basic, with a, basic Zoom account, with a basic, unpaid YouTube channel. I was literally just recording and uploading videos on YouTube, so it was like 3 years ago. And the second reason why I wanted to start was I wanted to do public speaking, right? Now, these public speaking opportunities, they don't show up everywhere you turn around, especially when you haven't done public speaking before. So I looked at podcasts as the closest thing to public speaking, right? So I'm willing to put myself into an embarrassing situation, right? Making mistakes and learning from them. But I can't think of a better exercise than that, just to exercise through dialogue and having that dialogue captured into a video format and put it out for the world to see and comment, right? And also criticize as needed. The third reason was I realized this in multifamily, we're a multi-trillion, I think it's a $3 or $4 trillion industry. People might not realize between all the assets owned and the management and the vendors and everything. That's a huge business. Between one-on-one conversations, like let's just pretend, right, the conversation we have now.
Yes, right.
In part, let's say multifamily, right, above multifamily. So between one-on-one conversations and between conferences, there's nothing else outside of that. Now, who is participating to these conversations? Obviously, on a one-on-one conversation, there's two people, or maybe there's a round table and there's 3 or 4 or 5.
Right.
Conferences, you will get hundreds or thousands of people. Now, we have hundreds of thousands of people in the industry, that work in the industry, probably over 1 million people easily.
Sure, easily.
Between operators, investors, and vendors. Now, do you think that that's enough, dialogue, that there's enough information exchange? My opinion was that there isn't, right? There's a huge void. Those events are not scalable. Even when you have a gathering like NIA that's coming in June, partnerized for 15, 17,000 people, that's still like a small, tiny fraction of the entire industry. So I'm thinking, what is the way to scale, those conversations? I thought we're just going to put them on record. We're going to record them. And I made a point in doing as many conversations as I could possibly can and to get her out there. And my goal is to invite very interesting guests, some of them very high-level executives that most people, most employees, or like most people in general don't have access to, kind of be the mirror person to ask questions on behalf of others that don't have that direct access. And because I was fortunate enough that I have a lot of those executives in my network, I reach out to them, I ask them to come on a podcast, and we do that on a regular basis. As you mentioned, the Multifamily Hangout is live once, but also have a couple of other podcasts that are pre-recorded. So we try to put out between, anywhere between 6 and 10 episodes long form a month.
Okay, that's awesome. And through that, obviously, we talked about this a ton on the podcast, when you're creating long form content like podcasts, hour-long podcast, Gary Vaynerchuk says you can take that one piece of long form content and create 64 pieces of content from that one piece of long form content. Now, that may be a little bit over the top for some people, unless you actually have a media company with a lot of employees doing that for you, because believe me, creating one piece of content is hard enough. Creating 64 on a daily basis is just over the top. But again, the point is that you're able, through this, just another added benefit of it is you're able to create more content, put the message out there on multiple platforms, multiple mediums, and get more attention to this. And I love the point that you're bringing out about the volume of the consumers of this industry, right? Yeah, sure. There are a bunch of podcasts out there, but there are not many that are really successful. Meaning, yes, everyone and their mother has a podcast, and past 5 years, I think it's blown up, right? How many people have started podcasts, but then how many will actually continue it? Only about 10 or 20% will continue the podcast for over a year. Being a guest on over 500 podcasts, I've seen so many come and go, and those who stick with it are the ones that are really truly adding value to the community. And so I think what you have and what you've, your vision, you talked about your goals and your vision, and I think that speaks volumes to what you have to offer to this community. And hopefully, I wish you success in continuing that. It's a great name, Multifamily Hangout, and we definitely had some fun hanging out.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I hope to have you on as a guest to the long form, to do an entire hour with you at some point.
Yeah, listen, I'd be happy to do so. Cost segregation is a topic that does not get enough attention out there, which is why I've been on so many podcasts, just spreading the word. But on a daily basis, I still find people that have no idea what it is, and just trying to educate the masses. Adrian, I want to transition now to what we call the final 4. So these are 4 questions that I ask all my guests. And the first question for you is, what's the worst job that you ever had?
Without actually getting into, the intricate details, I will say the worst job that I had was a job that I felt stuck in, right? I don't see a future. I didn't see a next step. I saw just like a continuous, like a hamster wheel type of situation, to where I would go every day, I'll put in my time, I'll work hard, but I would hit the ceiling. I felt like every day I was, suffocating, like there was no more room for me and there was no way to break that ceiling. I'm the type of person that doesn't really want to, wait around. So I've done that repeatedly for a long period of time. And then when I realized that, it doesn't bring me happiness, right? I had to find different ways to change it, to switch to something that, really gave me purpose. Because I think it's more than anything is purpose, right? Beyond titles and shiny and, a bigger paycheck, I think it's about like purpose, seeing that you're making a difference. And then there's also room for more for you to do. There's more out there for you.
Yeah. That's a very common theme among the answers that I get on this podcast to that question about what the worst job, is something where you're not fulfilled. It's something where you don't see purpose in it. Now, the other side of the coin is people just like manual labor or, people working in fast food or something like that. They're just unfulfilling in that regard. They're just very difficult. But I totally relate. I think everyone can relate to that everyone's been in a place where you just see there's no future here. So why am I even here in the first place? And the sooner you can realize that, the sooner you can get out and find something of your own, which is, why you've become, entrepreneur and owning your own investment properties. It's a whole different way of thinking. You're able to have more control. So I love that. Second question for you is, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
I think a book that has a very unique concept, right? And it's by Tim Ferriss. It's Tools of Titans. Mm-hmm. Tim Ferriss had this, amazing, simple but very amazing and effective idea to interview, I believe it was 100 or maybe over 100, hundreds of very successful people in so many various industries, right?
Right.
Or athletes or artists, but very successful people at the top of their game, the people that reach pinnacle, the very top, right? The best of the best in the world. And he put that into a book. So that's kind of like when I hear about, life hacks or like, hacks in general, it makes me smile because I've been working hard for over 30 years and I can't really share any hacks with you. But if there was, one thing that's the closest to a, life hack will be modeling the masters. This is something that I learned from an amazing sales coach. His name is Jack Daly. Jack Daly was on my podcast and he stresses on that. Model the masters. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be behind the wheel. Just look at what others did to become successful and just model that. And Tim Ferriss had this amazing idea, like absolutely brilliant, to have like hundreds of them, put them in a book. And then you read the book and you learn from the best of the best. I can't think of a better master class. There's like hundreds of master classes in one book.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first of all, to interview them in the first place, the long form of that, it was, just incredible. And you can listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast to get all but then put it into a book and kind of condense down, the main points and the things to bring out from that. Yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are people out there who have been successful in every area, and something that you want to do, guaranteed someone has done it before or done something similar that you can learn from. So love that idea and love that book. We're going to put that in the show notes for anyone who wants to check that out. Third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Multifamily underwriting.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Underwriting. Okay. Well, seems pretty... How are you with math in general? Excel?
I'm pretty decent with math. My mother was a math teacher.
Okay.
So she stressed that I know my math. I had no choice in the matter. Maybe not complicated math, but the formulas, the basic formulas and everything. I'm pretty decent up to this day, even without practicing really.
I mean, there's a lot of, courses out there and a lot of things like that. Have you checked out Rob Beardsley? He's got a great book on underwriting and I'm blanking on the name of it. I can picture it on my bookshelf at home, but just breaks down underwriting multifamily. He's one of the best out there.
I'd love to put my hands. Do you know if there's an audio version?
I don't know, but I know we've had him on the show and he talked a lot about it there. You can definitely check it out on Amazon. I'll find the link and get it to you. Multifamily, underwriting multifamily, something like that. The ultimate guide to something like that. Ultimate guide to underwriting multifamily property, something like that. Fourth and final question, Adrian, what does success mean to you?
Success. This is one of the hardest questions, right? But I'm just going to try to respond. I think success is do something that's meaningful to you. Mm-hmm. That really gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning. It could be something very simple, or it could be being Elon Musk. I don't know how Elon Musk feels about himself. But I know one thing, as long as I'm excited to get out of bed and think that I could do. There's another day, there's another chance that I have that God gave me to do great things out in the world. That's success to me. Yeah. And also success is being able to pass on some of the things that you learn to the generations that are coming from behind, basically paying it forward. I'm at a point in my life where I'm making a point in taking, I'll say, mentees, right? I have a few younger individuals that I'm mentoring. Mm-hmm. And I try to pass on my way of thinking, some of the things that I've learned over the years in helping them like shorten that learning curve of life, hoping that will be successful. I think that that's passing that baton and paying it forward. It's also, to me, part of success, right? Because I'm in a fortunate position to be. Not everybody is fortunate that way to be asked for advice, to be the person that could influence someone's life and career. Mm-hmm. And I believe I'm fortunate. That's also part of what I see success to be.
For sure. It's like whatever you have, if you're not passing it on to the next generation and it ends with you, like really what was the purpose of it? We have a privilege, we have a responsibility to impact the world. And part of that is focusing on the future, focusing on how the good things that you've done and accomplished in this world can be passed on and continued and not just end with you. So that's a very difficult thing. I mean, it's in general, parenting and being an educator, being a teacher, it's one of the biggest challenges, but it's absolutely, necessary responsibility. And, I wish you much luck with that success in that aspect. Finally, Adrian, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
I will say the main platform will be multifamilyxconsulting.com. It's my firm website. One of my podcasts is also listed there. The second one would be themultifamilyhangout.com. Is the website for my second podcast. The third one is LinkedIn. If you type in Adrian, middle initial C, last name Danila, Danila, you will find me there. I would love to connect with you, and I love to share some of my life experience and see if I could add value to you. That's the purpose for me to network. That's absolutely networking.
For sure. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out today, Adrian. I really enjoyed this conversation and look forward to many more.
Yonah, thank you so much. It's been an honor to be, and I'm looking forward to find a time that works for us both to have you on my show to educate more on cost segregation, me included. I need to learn more about it.
All right, awesome. Sounds good. And thank you to our listeners for joining in once again and listening all the way to the end. Remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yonah Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.